Well, as we celebrate the spirit of Diwali, wealth, wisdom and strength, I'm joined by one of India's most thoughtful and respected market voices, Manish Chokhani, a veteran investor, mentor and former Enam honcho. Manish has always looked beyond the ticker, reminding us that real wealth isn't built overnight, but over time, through ownership, patience and purpose. At a moment when India stands tall amid a turbulent world, he says it's time for this generation to take the baton, to build platforms, to build IPs, own platforms and carry India to the top 2 economies of the world. Today on the interview with me, Aisha Faridi, here's Manish Chokhani himself. Manish, thank you so much, and firstly, Happy Diwali.
Happy Diwali, Aisha. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. So much learning and I'm looking forward to that. But let's start off with the trio, the trilogy of Lakshmi, Saraswati, Durga. How is it that you actually, sort of conjure this balance into the investing life?
So, thanks for asking me that, because it's a pet topic of mine. That if we keep only worshipping Goddess Lakshmi, which is Goddess of Wealth, you miss out, because in Hindi they say Lakshmi ji chanchal hoti hai. She doesn't stay in one place for long.
Yes.
Unless it's accompanied by knowledge and wisdom, which is the Goddess Saraswati, which in India we worship her for her wisdom. And if you have all the knowledge or you have all the wealth, but you don't have love and emotion in your life, which is what Goddess Durga represents, then what's the value of all of that? Which is why I think they made the holy trio of Lakshmi, Saraswati and Durga. They all have to be resident in your life and your homes together to give you a truly enriching life.
And how do you equate that with the world of investing?
So even in investing, if you think of it, the world keeps on changing. And if you think of it, those who don't keep abreast with changes in technology or trends, if you think of, say, what companies ruled the Indian index 30, 35 years ago, most of them are not even there in the index anymore. And if you weren't abreast with what was happening, whether it's in IT or whether it's with trends elsewhere in the world and how they came and impacted us, you would have lost out on all of those, opportunities as well. And similarly, if you only came obsessed about your wealth or your knowledge, you sometimes lose out on the gratitude you must have for being born in this country.
Yeah.
Because again, it's something I say that if, when God was pointing you down to earth, if the GPS had got mildly off, imagine where you would have landed in the neighborhood. And you'd be more worried about your life or your livelihood rather than, making wealth for yourself.
Yeah.
Or like as we sit in Bombay this year, you see a culmination of so many infrastructure projects finally coming, making the metro and the coastal road and the Trans-Harbour Link, the new airport. So there is a rate of change which you feel happy about, as someone living in this country. And I always say, you're now in India at the best time, because the next 20 years, where the 27, 28-year-old average Indian will come into their own over the next 20 years, is very different from the average youngster in Europe or Japan, who only have the glory years to look in the rearview mirror.
There are youngsters
too. No, they do have birth rate. I mean, it's not like it's gone to zero. But if you're born there, you're kind of surrounded with low energy. Your glory years are behind you. You're scared about, what China is going to do to you in Europe or Japan or wherever. So I think at least we are facing it with a spirit of confidence and optimism, that it will take time. We don't become a success overnight. But as this generation especially works towards it, and you said in your opening remarks about, now building our own IP, building our own brands, it's also something which will happen over the coming decade.
And you've always maintained that, right? That from India now, if we have to become one of the top 2 or 3 economies of the world, it's upon the younger generation to take it forward, for them to ideate more, to own businesses and IPs. You've always emphasized on that.
And there's a time for it, right? Like in our generation, we came just happy to make our livelihood and to have a house and a car and everything by the end of your life. This generation which comes, there is no dearth of capital. Now, whether you come from a business family or you don't, actually the capital gushing towards you is incredible. And it's patient capital, because whether it's venture or private or even HNI families now putting in money, they give you the runway to go and try and create something. And in the past, we grew up in this very agency type model, where an Indian industrialist would take an agency of a foreign company and build a company in India and list it and make money. or we would become a B2B processor for someone, including our much wanted and very respected IT or pharma. We were really generic players for the world. We didn't really own the IP. So even if TCS makes let's say even if but let's say they make $10 billion, the people they are servicing are individually all making $100 billion. And we never took ownership of the IP. Similarly, in terms of brands, when you go abroad now, the largest market cap I think in Europe now is LVMH. Yeah. And all they did was take the small brands or artisans, put them together and build it into an aspirational luxury product. Now, is it conceivable that say a Titan takes Indian jewelry, Indian design, takes it global, and it's a different look, and you have a right to win over there? Is it possible that some of our Ayurveda companies, for example, which have wellness as a central theme, not like allopathy is treating you separately on physical side and mental health is treated separately. You have solutions which are very unique, and India does have a right to win. You take Indian hospitality, for example. We've all been used to say Marriott, then later it transitioned to Mandarin Oriental or things like that.
Or the Four
Is it conceivable
Seasons,
you will eventually see Indian hotels or some other brand like that taking Indian hospitality outside? Today, Air India is not at its best. But will we ever see Air India competing with Singapore Airlines, Emirates and so on, and giving you that kind of quality experience? So it will happen. As Japan globalized, we got Japanese brands. Then Korea globalized, we got Korean brands. China globalized, we got Chinese brands. And I think the time for India will also come.
So aviation, Titan,
No, I'm giving you as
jewelry.
examples. I'm not suggesting them. But I'm saying it's today inconceivable for people to think of it. But there will be a time over the next 10 years where a lot of these banks will necessarily have to go outward with our Indian businesses. For example, RBI has opened acquisition financing. Historically, all that business went to the foreign banks. Now it could be the Indian banks which could be the providers for a lot of this capital to you. It was inconceivable for me to think 30 years ago when I started. The largest foreign investor was Capital Group, and they were a sub-$100 billion equity group globally. Today you have a $100 billion mutual fund out of India. So there is a time when even all this will globalize. So it's fun. It's something to look forward to.
It is exciting times. But you've always said that real ownership lies in building or owning a business for the long term. We're living in the very quick, QCOM, instant gratification era. How is it that you actually change the mindset of this young generation to actually hold for the long term and build for the future?
So, well, the reality of life is you get everything not with instant gratification, but delayed gratification. Yeah. And even the examples of the companies you're giving, it's not like Zomato was built in 2 years. It takes, as they say, it takes 7 years or more to become an overnight success. And all these people have put in the hard yards. Even there's a company which we had invested in early called Lenskart.
Yes,
which was invested back 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And at that time, I think it was probably a $100 million pre-money number on which we had gone. And it's probably going to come I'm not giving the number because I don't want to steal their thunder on the IPO, but it's billions of dollars. So it takes its time, and it's not like every person is cut out to be an entrepreneur. Our market gives you a chance to come into equities through mutual funds. But people who have the wherewithal, if I give a statistic, the richest investor in the stock market would say have reached 50,000 crores, which is a staggering number by any yardstick anyway. But if you take the promoter of 125th number company in India, his wealth would be in excess of that. Yeah. So in the markets, you have to be number one to become 125 on the entrepreneur list. Yeah. So isn't that something much more worth trying if you have the ability to do that? And if not, of course, this is great. Like I saw recently, someone puts out Shah Rukh Khan makes $1 billion in his wealth. Yeah. By being the number one megastar for 30 years, that's the number he reached. So stock market better than being a movie star, but being an entrepreneur is better than being a stock market investor.
Which will not work in today's dynamics. But at the same time, what's happening in the world is this tectonic shift, so to speak, right?
Sure.
Everyone is looking inwards, and that seems like an ideology which is coming right from the top. Can it survive, really?
So your question is bang on, but it's really two different trends. That one is the political trend, which because people have kind of, how do I say, juiced the system a bit too much in the West, which model was built after the World War, and they kind of took it as their birthright. So that second and third generation gave away the efforts of the hard work done by the previous generations of Americans or Europeans. And therefore, when you start giving away jobs to immigrants, and then the immigrant becomes rich, you start resenting them. And that's the move towards the right-wing politics in most of these countries. Like imagine Britain, which went out and imposed themselves on half the world, voting that let's get the immigrants out. I mean, you guys went, and it was a bit rich. It was a bit rich for UK to say we don't want foreigners in the country. Like, why did you come here then to start with? But that trend is playing out globally, and that's a political trend. But at the same time, it's not like businesses have ceased being global. So when America decided we will outsource manufacturing and it all went to China, today China is pretty much 50% of global manufacturing capacity. And you can't wish it away, whatever the political leadership says. And we are seeing evidence of that even in how gently now Trump talks about China, as opposed to India or Brazil, where he stacks very heavily. Even the Chinese, I don't think they can do without the American market as well. And they may route it through different ways. But eventually, if a third of the world's produce reaches the American consumer, they have to find ways to reach them. And in that same vein for us, if we are 3-4% of global GDP and 3-4% of global market cap, and if we are content to remain 3-4% and be a distant number 3 to America and China, which is okay. But if we aspire to closing the gap between a 4 trillion and a 20 trillion, surely you have to take share of global markets. And that global market, like I said, cannot become just a processor for IT or pharma or small amount of manufacturing. It has to become a mega owner of IP and brands, because the value capture really happens there. And you have deep domestic markets now. So for example, Indian two-wheelers are global because they had depth in the domestic market. Now you may laugh that, oh, they are only selling into Latin America or Africa or rest of Asia, but it is a global market. It doesn't mean globalization only means I have to go and sell into the US. Yeah. There are markets out there in the whole world. And again, like I gave you examples, whether it was, Titan or Dabur or Air India or Indian Hotel, I'm just giving them as illustrative thoughts.
Brands which can become big.
Similarly, if you can build the Zoho in India, right? Now, if you move 50 million people onto Zoho platform, it is a sizable global platform. Like the Tatas took over Tejas network and we built our 5G stack, and they will now build the 6G and so on. It's not like we cannot do it. Our thought process was, first let me secure my current, then I think about the future. I think now the current is secure. We've got a $4 trillion market cap. We probably got more than $3 or $4 trillion worth of gold now. We probably got $3 or $4 trillion worth of real estate now, if not more. So it is a wealthy country. Now for people to start thinking from a place of confidence, that now let's take bets, because how do we take this 10 trillion of wealth and make it 100? It's not going to happen by doing what we did, historically for the last 20 years.
What will it take, really?
It's intent.
You give some examples.
I think it's intent. It's just a question of intent. It's not like there's no lack of energy, there's no lack of brain power, there's no lack of capital. And if you have the intent, technology now is for you to create.
Is it intent, or is it just contentment of being homegrown and doing well?
No, I think there was some degree. I would still say it's not a slam dunk, because our difficulty of doing business over here is not something which is gone. The difficulty of the court processes and the processes which delay you in the bureaucracy are not something you wish away. There are a lot of companies which go outside and build, and they get to success much faster and they can become bigger. Because again, the same example, if people can leave India and become CEO of Google and Microsoft and so on, it's not like there was lack of brain or lack of understanding of technology. It's how do you create that ecosystem? And I think the triad of putting defense, automobile industry in particular, and universities together is really how most technologies have developed in the world. Because really auto use is really half of most countries' manufacturing GDP. because they're putting and consolidating
Traditional
everything
industry,
together.
yeah.
And that's why they have the wherewithal to, take technology and putting things together and going down that path. And the IT side of technology, which really comes out of defense, because now most of defense is not about guns and arrows. It's really
about the
what
tech.
can you do about cyber?
Yeah.
What can you do in space? Like if you had not built, say, this Akash Tir domestically, with 4 or 5 S-400s, you won't have been able to even counter a Pakistan. Imagine what would happen if the other larger neighbor were to do something with you. So clearly, it is again this technology, defense, auto, universities, all has to come together, and it is happening. And the government, I think, is also conscious and playing down that path.
So I want to link it to investments. How is it that you actually make your portfolio go global, and especially for the retail investor who doesn't have many options, and you're trying to build a portfolio which is not just China plus one, it's US plus one, and maybe then RIC, as you describe it, Russia, India, China as well,
yeah.
on
Everyone
one
needs to
end.
pay. Yeah. So, well, for a retail investor, first of all, you play to your strengths. So if you know cricket, don't try and play soccer. So if you know I'm not going to beat a mutual fund manager, and there are so many good managers out there now, and you can hire them literally for less than 1%.
Or wealth managers.
Right?
Yeah.
And another theme of mine has been, if you remember, every year we speak about it, is the golden period of entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Is the 40s to early 50s. If you look at our fund management business, don't you see all of them around?
Yeah.
Now, even if I take the largest
one right
funds,
in front, Karan Bhagat.
Yeah. We spoke about him in the
Yes.
past, or even Dipinder, who's running Zomato, or even the fund industry. If you take Vasan at SBI, or you take Chirag and Navneet at HDFC, or Naren and Anish at ICICI, or even those who've gone out on their own. There's Pankaj Tibrewal, Vikas Khemani, Sunil, so many of them around. And they're talented, good allocators of capital with good track records. Why is a retail guy trying to beat them? Do what you're good at. Let these guys be the stewards of your money. You don't make money in India, honestly, by buying an ETF, because the market is still broad-basing. But active managers like this, who buy stocks bottom up, do create value for you. You have to have patience. In every cycle, everyone's not going to win every quarter, every 6 months. Like in a company. Companies also go through their phases, and the funds will also go through their phases. But if you're, by and large, with the right steward of your money, I think there's tremendous wealth to be made here. Even to go global, there are opportunities. A lot of the fund houses had indeed put out products through which you could access global markets. Even stuff which everyone knew last year or year before, that there will be a move toward hard assets, thanks to the debasement of currencies, has played out in gold and silver, and that bull market is still alive. Even those products were available to you. So it's really a question. At heart, you need to sit back and think, how do I want my asset allocation? Historically, Indians put money in real estate and gold as a kind of anti-inflation hedge, where the Indian currency kept losing value. It's also now playing into the global inflation, which now the US and the West has unleashed. So this trend is only going to accelerate. It's not going away in a hurry. But that's a place, what I call the fear trade, that you don't want to lose. So you park money in real estate and gold. The hope trade is always equities, because you can grow the business and become much larger. And there are opportunities in India to do that as well. So if your asset allocation mix is okay, your position sizing is okay, you don't get stampeded out whenever some kind of global turmoil upsets our markets. And at that time, if let's say you have 2 years of your expenses on the side, or something saved for a rainy day, or maybe always 5-7% cash available to buy some great opportunity, I think you'll be fine.
But that's the thing, because while you've always maintained that equity is the biggest wealth creator, the last 1 year is actually proving you wrong, because look at the wealth effect that gold and silver created.
See, even if you keep trying to, like Buffett describes it, where if you're playing gin and rummy and you want to discard the worst card at every time, you're going to lose the game. If you think on a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year basis, and you found the right 10 or 20 stocks, like even in last year, there must be, to my mind, at least 30% of the companies in India which have made more than 30% return.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And the index per se, I'm saying, is very misleading, because unlike the past, where 8 companies were 25% of India's market cap, the next maybe 10 or 12 were the next 25, and the next 40 were the next 25. So 70 odd companies took up 75% of India's market cap. That's really broadened out now. So the first 25 from 8 has gone to probably 12 or 13. The next 25 from maybe 12 or 13 has probably gone to 40. And the next has actually probably gone to another 70. So now you need 150 companies as opposed to 75 in the old days to cover 75% of India. So as it's broad basing, the rate of change is what you need to capture. I don't need to necessarily buy the largest company, right? Because now you know, say a Reliance cannot compound at the pace that a smaller company can. You know the Indian IT services sector is not going to compound. So the index has natural headwinds. But say in the financial space, like the largest bank may not compound, but the capital markets came up very quickly to compound at a different pace. So again, it's a question of how you make your portfolio construction. And again, for a retail person, he's best placed to go into maybe a flexi cap fund with someone, or a multi-asset fund, because they can buy them REITs, they can buy them gold, silver, they can buy them some kind of fixed income, and they can buy them different types of equity in that. By and large, I would say as an Indian investor, don't keep looking at measuring things every Diwali or every Holi. It doesn't work. An industry, like even you take this case where you said of people becoming a success, it takes 7 years to become a success.
Of course, yeah.
Now in that 7 years,
nothing happens overnight.
There's periods of extreme pessimism in the middle where you think, let me give up, this may not work. Like even this whole IP thing and all which I talk about, we've been in the company now for 10 years. And 10 years later, the success is like a couple of zeros more than we would have imagined as well. And there were points in the middle where you would have felt, my gosh, this may not work out and it may go to zero. And the trick is for an entrepreneur, the trick is to stay alive till you get lucky. And it's the same for an investor. As long as you found the right business and a good steward of your capital who has integrity, energy, ability, there will be periods of ups and downs, but eventually you see where that ship is sailing towards. And the bulk of the money, honestly, in equities lies in terminal value. And what is your perception of that terminal value? So if you think, for example, of old media, the multiples kept degrading because new media and digital took over. Same thing may happen to the old Indian IT services or the old Indian generic pharma. But there are new things which are coming over there.
That's the thing. As an investor, this transition which is happening pretty much across sectors. And if you really think that, okay, if the markets were to remain flat at an index level for the next, say, 2 years or 3 years or whatever, and, till this global flux settles down, and you have to really go back to the drawing board and sort of rebuild your portfolio, there's so much transition. You don't know where to start.
It's always been the case, no? Hasn't it?
No.
I mean, when the internet came, we thought everything
was. There's pretty much every sector which is transitioning.
You know what's happened? I think we've become a little older and wiser, so we look at more things.
Maybe.
And also, the news flow has started dominating from the world.
Perhaps, yeah. You know more.
Yeah, we just not been able to access it, so you feel, gosh, this is hitting. But for example, the whole world has moved to EV. China is now 50-60% EV sales. They've completely uprooted the European car industry, the American car industry. But if you look at Maruti and Hyundai over here, it's like nothing's happened. Yeah. Right? But when it happens, you'll wonder what the hell happened. Yeah. So if you're not aware of what's going on in the world, like it was in the past, when the internet came, we thought it's something happening. America Online and Time Warner are merging. How does it matter to us over here? It did matter, didn't it? Same way, if you got overexcited and you paid an excessive price for even Infosys. 2001, it peaked at $45 billion market cap. Today, 24 years later, it's probably at 80 billion. It's not even doubled in dollar terms in 24 years. But the rupee depreciated, so we felt, all is good, life is good, let's carry on. Yeah. But those times are changing for sure. But change has been a constant.
Manish Chokhani, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks
Always
for
such
having me.
Learning, and you really sort of keep our creative juices flowing, and so much food for thought.
Be cheerful and be grateful.
Yes, of course.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.